sorry this video is not, I wanted to film it before, but it just hasn't worked out because I like to try and film in the mornings because that's when the lighting is best, but hasn't worked out. I've been busy these past couple of mornings. We are finally going to do an August wrap-up, okay, and I had a perfect reading month in August, and it's too bad it happened in August because the heat is just outrageous. But I have a nice fountain soda in my gorgeous cup that I love. This cup so much. So out of the 8 books on my TBR that we picked, no, out of the 10 books on my August TBR that we picked together, I read 8, and the 2 I did not get to, ironically, are the 2 shortest ones, and that is The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, and This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I did start this one. Like the first chapter. I'm not very far in. But those are the 2 I did not get to this month. So I am really proud of myself, especially since most of these ended up being longer, bigger books. But I had such a good reading month. I have a new favorite out of all the ones I've read this year. So let's get into it. Starting off, I'm surprised by how much I really just had such a great time with this one, and I still randomly think about it, and that's Rip Van Winkle by Washington Irving. I have read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. I didn't know that was the same person when I picked this one up, but I figured it out. So this is just a fun, whimsical story and this has such beautiful illustrations. I mean, the ferrymen are just so mischievous looking throughout this book. It's amazing. But this follows Rip Van Winkle, and he is a lazy person. He's not very productive, and his wife yells at him a lot about that. And one day, he does this quite frequently, but he goes out hunting with his dog, and one day he climbs up the hills to go hunting, and he sees this little guy trying to get up the hill with this giant, like, keg, I believe, of beer, I think it was, with him. And so Rip Van Winkle decides to help him, and he follows the little man, and they go down to this little knoll in the ground, and all these other little guys are playing 9-pins, which I think is bowling, and they offer him some of their beverage, and he drinks it, and then he takes a nap, and he wakes up, and it's like 100 years later. No, not 100, 50 years later. And then it was just such a fun, whimsical story, and the artwork really is incredible. I mean, look at these guys. Here's another one. Ooh. Where'd the one go that I wanted? This one's great. But I love the artwork, and this story was just so fun that I highly recommend it. I really, really loved it, so I have to read more of his work, as well as I want to reread The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by him. Next, we have one that I am really happy I finished, because I did pick this one up and then didn't finish it, and that's Jack and Jill by Louisa May Alcott. I think with her writing, I just need a book between her books, because I read 8 Cousins and then I tried to go immediately into Jack and Jill, and it just didn't work for me. So I set it down for a little bit and I picked it back up, and it was really sweet. So all of Louisa May Alcott's are very sweet and heartwarming. But this particular story follows Jack and Jill. Jill's real name is Janie, but her and Jack are such close friends that everyone calls them Jack and Jill. And they're super, super close friends. And one day, it's winter, all the kids are out sledding, and one of the boys tells Jill that she is not big enough to go down the giant hill. And so she convinces Jack to do it with her, and they start going down this hill, and they end up crashing into the fence post, and Jack breaks his leg, and Jane injures her, Jill, I'm just gonna call her Jill. Jill injures her back, and this sort of just follows their story as they're slowly recovering, and them trying to, them learning these life lessons and trying to be brave while they're recovering. This one had really cute illustrations in it, and at one part, one of the characters dies, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not expect that to happen. But I loved all the background, all the other characters in it too. They were all so sweet, and this book was just really cute and heartwarming with all the lessons they learned and the friendships they had. So I really love Louisa May Alcott's writing. They're very just endearing stories. Then we have one by a new author to me. This is one of the ones that I ordered online that was coming, and that's The Unraveling of Emmeline Delane by Lisa A. Franklin. So, this story is a little, I like the plot, okay, or the concept of the plot. It's very unique and very interesting, but this story follows Emmeline Delane and her sister Camille went missing 7 years ago. They were both playing at this park together, and she was writing in her notebook, and she looked up and her sister was like unraveling and then disappeared. And she told the police that she looked down at her journal, and when she looked up, Camille was gone. But when one day she decides to pick back up the notebook she was writing in, and this is 7 years later after her sister disappeared, and this little dragon guy appears, and she thinks she's going crazy because this little dragon is just popped out of nowhere, and he leads her back to the spot where her sister disappeared, and then she feels like hears these voices calling her name, and she goes into this other world called Rivenly. And Rivenly is this other world parallel to ours, and in it they have this place where they basically fix stories, so like plot holes and love triangles, they like fix the stories so they work well, or if something goes wrong in a story, they send in the teams to fix it. It's kind of like if you've seen the Loki series, the TVA, how they fix the timelines, it's kind of like that, but with stories. And it turns out Emmeline is the 9th member of one of the teams, because they have teams to go in and fix the stories, and there's 9 person in each team. They all have different abilities, and she is the dragon member, which means she can basically go in. I don't know why it's called that. We don't really get an explanation about why it's called a dragon, why she's called a dragon. She can go into a story, see what's wrong with it so that she can help the team fix it. And I liked this book. I feel like we were a little too character driven, that we sort of neglected the plot, because especially towards the end, things just started happening that we didn't get an explanation for, and we hadn't built up the world enough that it felt like it mattered too much. So I hope in the next one, because the next one comes out in February, we focus more on the plot and the world instead of so much on the characters, as well as we focus so much on like this main set of characters that we didn't really explore the different abilities of the team members, because she makes friends with one of them who is a sentinel, and the other who is not, they're not called griffins, but they have wings, but her wings are like broken, and as well as this other boy. So we really only focused on her and then 4 other members of the team, so we didn't really explore the other powers that the other teammates had. But so I'm really hoping, the ending was interesting, so I hope the next one we do focus more on the plot and exploring the magics and stuff like that. But this one inspired me to read The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, because they go into that story because something went wrong in it to fix it, and then she sort of starts to see that things are broken in Rivenly itself. But I do like the uniqueness of the plot, and I did like it enough to want to read the second one. So that is that one. Then we have this one. I'm still not sure how I feel about this book, but that's The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. So first of all, the narration of this book is very interesting and a little off-putting at times, because it's narrated by an angel of death. I don't think it's death itself, because he doesn't really, he just goes and gets people's souls after they've died. But it follows death, and he's telling you the story about the book thief. And the book thief is Liesl Memminger. She is how old was she? Maybe 10. I don't really remember her age when we start, but she's on the train and she's going to her adoptive parents, and her little brother dies on the train journey there, which does play a part in other parts of the story. And when they're burying her brother, the guy who's digging the grave, he leaves it behind, and so she steals it, and that starts her sort of journey as the book thief. But I really loved her relationship with her adoptive dad. It was really sweet to read about, and the little connections they have when he would like stay up with her when she had bad dreams and such. But so Liesl she starts stealing books because she does live in Nazi Germany, and at one point they're hiding a Jewish man in their basement. But her and her fan Rudy, he was super funny in this book. She steals one of the books from the Nazi book burnings, and this book had like such an interesting, I don't even know, perspective, because I have read stories about the World War II, especially in Germany, but from the perspective of the people who were persecuted. And this was more from the perspective of one of the kids that was, because it talks about her going to the programs that promoted the propaganda, and it was a very interesting and sort of eye-opening read for me. And I still don't know how I feel about it, because the ending was very interesting, is all I'll say, because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But I did like the characters and the character relations in here, as well as the narration just kind of threw me off at some points, because, I don't know, it just was weird. And also there's no chapters. It's just like, just a different part of the story with a different name. But, so there are no chapters in here. That's it. That wasn't too bad. So, I definitely read this book very fast, and I do think it is a good book to read. I just still don't really know how I feel about it. Then, this was sort of like a fantasy month. I would say that's the genre I read the most out of. This is the book I took on vacation with me. Well, not really vacation, but going to see family, and that's Sky of Seven Colors by Rachel Nielsen. So, she has very unique plots, because I read Ember Gold by her, and I really liked that one. But this follows Meg, and she is, I think, 17, and her mom recently passed away. She's living with her uncle, but her best friend Andrew decides to take her on a hike on their family's property for her birthday, and they're sort of like, and Andrew's going off to college, and there's sort of like hints of a relationship beginning to develop between them. And while they're on this hike, Andrew starts to sort of confess his feelings for her, but while he's doing that, they're walking while they're talking, he slips and falls, and he hits his head really hard and ends up going into a coma. And of course, Meg is devastated by this, but while he was talking to her, and they're in the forest, she sort of heard this like noises, and she thought it was the wind. But then when she's at the hospital with Andrew, she starts having these dreams about the place where he fell and hearing voices calling to her. So she decides to go back to where Andrew fell a couple days after, and she ends up like getting transported into this other world, and it's the in-between between the gray earth and our earth. In the gray earth, there is no color, it's all in shades of gray, and color is powerful, because there's a prophecy there that when the king takes a human wife, it will bless the land, because there are two races in the gray world, the regents and the croppers. The croppers are more traditional, because all the people have gifts, and the croppers' gifts are more for healing, storytelling, growth. They're more the farmers and industrial part of that earth. But every couple years they have to like go into hibernation. But recently, the hibernation the king hasn't had enough power to bless it. So the prophecy is when he takes a human wife, she'll be able to help the king bless the cropper's sleep and sort of fix what's wrong with the gray earth. So she gets sucked into the in-between the worlds, and she meets Vaughn and Pross. They are both croppers. They've been waiting for like 50 years for a human to come into the in-between place. And at first, of course, she's like, absolutely not. She's terrified of them. They're really tall giants. I don't know if you can hear the dog barking. Probably. He's really loud. But eventually she realizes that the king has a gift. The king has the king's gift, which is sort of like the regent's gifts and the cropper's gifts combined. So he has a gift of healing. And she thinks, if I go into this kingdom and help them bless their sleep, he'll heal Andrew for me. That's sort of what's going through her mind. So she agrees to go with them into the Grey Earth, because in the Grey Earth, color like enhances their magic because they don't have any. And the croppers are really kind. The regents, however, are sort of really mean and arrogant and superior. But she goes and meets the king. The king is not, he's ugh. That's all I have to say about him. But he basically tells her, if you marry me and help give me power, I will heal Andrew for you. Because there's the king's gift and the queen's gift. I feel like this is a lot of explaining. And the queen's gift cannot go to a human. So if he were to marry her, he would have both the king's gift and the queen's gift, making him super powerful. So he tells her, if you marry me and I get the queen's gift from you, I will heal Andrew for you. So she decides to marry him. But there's things sort to go AWOL. And I did like this book. Like, the world building, she has really good world building and such. It did feel a little slow for me at some points, but I also liked how there were kind of no good guys within like the regent people. Even the plot twist and the conclusion with the like savior of the story wasn't a good person. So I definitely recommend if you want a sort of unique portal fantasy. So I do like her books. I think she's only written this one and Amber Gold, so I hope she writes a new book soon. Then I'm so happy I read this book. That is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I always feel so accomplished when I read a Brandon Sanderson book, although it did feel a little weird picking up a Brandon Sanderson and it not being like the same cast of characters in Stormlight Archive, because that's mainly the stuff I've read by him. But I'm so excited to dive back into the Cosmere. This is his first like Cosmere series, and this book was really good. It has some aspects I haven't read too much of before, so I really enjoyed it. But let me give you a plot. So where this world is set, they are ruled over by the Final Empire. And the Final Empire was established 1,000 years ago when the Lord Ruler ascended into like godship. I just got back from eating an omelet, so I was talking about Mistborn. I don't exactly remember what I was talking about. But they are ruled by the Final Kingdom. I think that's where I left off. And 1,000 years ago, this was set up by the Lord Ruler who ascended into like godhood. And this follows mainly Vin and Kelsier. Vin is a street urchin. She's a thief, and she has like this luck inside of her, is what she calls it at first. And Kelsier is the survivor of Hathsin, which is this prison place that not everyone dies at, but he didn't, so that's very important. And he's trying to get people together to pull off this impossible heist of overthrowing the Final Empire. And he ends up getting Vin, because Vin is very special because she is a Mistborn. So the way this magic system is set up, it's allomancy. So there's 10 allomancy metals that we know of. I think we're going to discover more. And there's 8 basic ones, but you swallow the metal and then burn it in your stomach and it gives you powers. And they're set in pairs, so like steel pushing and iron pulling. Could be reversed, but same gist. And you can either be a Misting, where you have one of these abilities, or you can be a Mistborn. We have all of them. It's sort of like a all or nothing. And Vin is a Mistborn, and so is Kelsier. So Kelsier ends up hiring Vin onto the thieving crew because he wants her, and starts teaching her the ways of being Mistborn. And I really love this book because I feel like I haven't read a lot about impossible heists, and I do really like that as a plot. And I loved the character development we saw in Vin as she slowly started like beginning to trust other people and such. I really loved that. I did really love Kelsier as a character as well. And I feel like all the background characters were also really well fleshed out and developed. So all of them worked really well together, and the plot was crazy towards the end especially. As well as we got a little cameo from Wit, but he goes under the name Hoid. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know that guy. But this was such a good read. I can't wait for the second book, which is called Well of Ascension, which is very interesting because I have questions about the whole Ascension bit. But I highly recommend all of Brandon Sanderson's work, and I'm so glad I'm back in the Cosmere, back in the thick of it. And hopefully I think since you're supposed to read this before Way of Kings, but since I did it backwards basically, I'm sort of seeing connections because I think this planet is called Scadrial, and that was talked about, which here's a little spoiler for Wind and Truth, so if you don't want that, just go ahead and skip. In Wind and Truth, when Shallan was looking at the Ghostbloods map, they were trying to transport Stormlight onto Scadrial, as well as Alstrom was a location mentioned here, which was also mentioned where the Ghostbloods wanted to take the Stormlight. So I'm starting to see some connections, and I'm really, really excited. Then we have yet another chunky fantasy, because I was just on my reading grind this month, and that was Bloodshed by Catherine Jordan. This is the third book in the Keeper of Light series, which is a high fantasy series that is very complicated, but I am really enjoying. And this book was intense. We really got into the nitty-gritty of things because we had a character death that I wasn't expecting that was rather upsetting, and all of these things were happening. We got some new characters. One of the things I love about her books is the wide cast of characters we have, and how at any given moment there's all these different moving parts, but then it all comes together. I really love that aspect of her books. And the ending was pretty happy, so I'm thinking, I could just stop here and save myself potential heartache in the next 3, because if it ends on a good ending, it can only get worse. But I highly recommend this series. I can't really go into too much detail about plot since I don't want to spoil it, but I'm really excited for the next one. Then, this book I'm so happy I read too, because I've had it for a while and I finally got to it. That's My Irish Folk and Fairy Tales Omnibus by Michael Scott, which I find hilarious because Michael Scott from The Office. But this book was very interesting for me because I have found I didn't like Grimm's fairy tales at all. They were just so short and similar to me, but I really liked the French fairy tales, and I really liked this because it had a lot of lore into it. It was reminiscent of Tolkien's, like the lore he built up around Middle-earth and the ages prior to the events of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And there were some similarities, like the Elvish people in here are called the Tua Dandanan, and Aragon and the descendants of Numenor are called the Dunedain, and that was just similar to me, but I really did enjoy this. Some of the stories were a little dark for me personally, but I did really enjoy this, and I picked this up because I love the cover, and I still really love the cover. I didn't realize this book is like 40 years old. I didn't realize that, but this was really good. I think I'm definitely more a folklore person than a Grimm's fairy tales person. I just don't like the Grimm's fairy tales, but this was very interesting and unique, and I loved seeing all, like, we had the mermaids and all the lore built up around the Shadowland and Tir Niog. It was really good. Okay, and then there's more. I read 2 online books, which is very crazy for me since I'm not an online reader, but I got this app. It's called EPUB Reader, and you can just read, if you have the book in a PDF file, you can read it. But the first one being Yenushak in Love. I'll move my head so I can put a picture. This is a short story set in the world of Ormdale, which is the Wormwood Abbey series. I love that series so much, and this was a little short story about 2 characters that I'm not going to say because it's sort of a spoiler if you haven't made it past book 4. But I loved it so much. These 2 characters, especially one of them, Yenushak, is one of my favorites in the Wormwood Abbey series, and we got an announcement at the end of the book for the new series coming out that's going to be set 10 years after the events of Valley of Dragons, and it's going to be called the Gilded Age of Dragons, the first one being called A Menagerie of Dragons. I'm literally so excited. I love this series so freaking much, and I can't wait to own them all. I also bought the deluxe Kickstarter edition, so when that comes, I think it's coming in December, or like December to April is the timeline for it to come and be ready to ship. I will definitely have to show you guys. I'm gonna set up a whole shrine for this series because I love it so much, but that is so exciting, and I loved the little short story. It was so sweet and cute, and I love those characters. Then, my favorite book of the year so far, drumroll, I got to read an e-art copy of Dark End by Crystal D. Grant. Oh, I still can't even believe it, but if you don't know, Dark End is the third and final book in the Gateway Trilogy by Crystal D. Grant. I love the Gateway Trilogy so much. Lightshed, which is the second, was my favorite book of all time last year, and I got to read an early copy. I'm going to put the gorgeous cover somewhere over here, and I literally set alarms so I would wake up in time, because they were a limited edition. But the Dark End book box, you get character art, a little Sanjo crochet, a cookie mix inspired by Lena, who is a baker, and a candle, a signed copy, and I cannot wait to do an unboxing because I will be filming it and doing it with you guys. But I love Dark End so freaking much. I don't want to spoil anything, but the character arcs that we went on in this series is so crazy and dear to my heart. I love all these characters. I love Prince Eric and Lena. I'm just gonna say that. I just love both of those characters so much. I love the stewardesses aspect of it. It was all so good. I will be doing a series reread, which will probably break my heart over again, but I will be doing it nonetheless. I will be doing it. But go read this series, you guys. It is available for pre-order, and the pre-order swag is available still, but I think it's limited, so go hurry, guys. But I love it so much. If you can't tell, it was such a work of art. This series is so freaking beautiful, and I cannot wait to have all my 3 copies with my special book box stuff. But favorite book of the whole year. Okay, so let me calm down from that a little crazy rant, but those are all the books that I read in the month of August. I hope you guys had a great reading month. I certainly did, and hopefully in September at the end of it, I will be able to say the weather has cooled down into fall weather instead of still being 90 degrees outside like it is today, September 6th. Or no, it's the 5th. It's 90 degrees outside still. It's very upsetting, but I hope you all had an amazing reading month, and I cannot wait to see you guys soon. I have a very fun video planned, and I just thank you guys all so much for the support of the channel, and goodbye.